Marcus adjusted his tie in the cracked mirror of his dressing room, the dim light casting jagged shadows across his face. He was 32, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just shy of his eyes, a look that screamed leading man, or so his agent kept telling him. Tonight was the premiere of Echoes of Dust, a low-budget indie flick he'd poured his soul into, hoping it'd be the spark to ignite his career. The red carpet loomed outside, a gauntlet of cameras and expectations, and his stomach churned like he'd swallowed a live wire. He ran a hand through his hair, tugging at the strands as if he could pull the nerves out with them. The reflection stared back, unyielding, a stranger in a suit. "Never judge a book by its cover," he muttered, smoothing his jacket. "Especially when it's me. I might look like I've got it together, but inside I'm a mess." It was a mantra he'd picked up somewhere, maybe from an old acting coach or a late-night scroll through life advice, a shield against the doubt that gnawed at him like a persistent rat. He'd landed the role of Jake, a brooding drifter, because the director saw something in his audition tape. "Grit," she'd said, her voice sharp and certain over the phone. But all Marcus saw in the mirror was a fraud waiting to be exposed, a man who'd spent too many years pretending he belonged. His phone buzzed on the counter, jolting him from his spiral. A text from his sister, Lena. "Knock 'em dead, big shot," he smirked, the corner of his mouth twitching upward, but the warmth faded fast, leaving a hollow ache. Lena didn't get it. She saw the posters, the trailers, the glossy version of Marcus plastered across bus stops and streaming ads. She didn't see the nights he'd spent pacing his cramped apartment, replaying every line he'd flubbed in rehearsals, convinced he was one bad takeaway from being blacklisted. She didn't hear the voice in his head that whispered he'd never be enough, not for the critics, not for the industry, not for himself. The door creaked open, and Ethan, his best friend since drama school, poked his head in. Ethan was shorter, wiry, with a mop of blonde curls and a grin that could disarm a firing squad. He'd been Marcus's rock through auditions, rejections, and the occasional gig that paid in exposure instead of cash, those lean months when they'd split a single pizza and called it a feast. Ethan leaned against the frame, hands in his pockets, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of Marcus's mind. "Ready to dazzle the masses?" Ethan asked, his tone light but his eyes searching. Marcus snorted, adjusting his cuffs to avoid meeting that gaze. "Ready to fake it till I make it. You know how it goes. Every time I step out there, it's like an emotional Olympics. I'm gold medaling and second-guessing myself." Ethan laughed, a sharp, bright sound that cut through the tension, and clapped him on the shoulder. "That's the spirit. You're your own worst critic, man. Always have been. Remember that improv class where you thought you tanked the scene, but the instructor called it genius?" "Yeah, well, someone's got to keep me humble," Marcus said, forcing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. But Ethan's words hit harder than he let on, lodging like a splinter under his skin. He'd spent years honing his craft, improv classes where he'd stumbled over lines, voice lessons that left his throat raw, late-night script readings under a flickering lamp, only to feel like he was still auditioning for his own life, begging for a callback from a universe that didn't care. Outside, the premiere buzzed with energy, a chaotic symphony of voices and lights. Flashbulbs popped as Marcus stepped onto the carpet, his smile a practiced mask he'd perfected over years of headshots and small roles. Reporters shouted questions. "How'd you prepare for Jake? What's next for you?" And fans waved, their excitement a distant hum against the roar in his head. He played the part, charming, untouchable, waving with a casual ease he didn't feel. But beneath the surface, his mind raced, a relentless loop of what-ifs. Did I overact in that third scene? Should I have pushed for another take? What if they hate it? What if they see through me? Backstage later, sipping lukewarm champagne that tasted like regret, he overheard two critics dissecting the film in clipped, clinical tones. "Solid visuals," one said, swirling his glass, "but the lead? Too stiff, like he's trying too hard." The other nodded, scribbling something in a notebook. Marcus's chest tightened, a vice clamping around his ribs. He slipped away, weaving through the crowd of producers and plus ones, until he found a quiet corner near the emergency exit. He slouched against the wall, staring at the scuffed floor, the noise of the party fading to a dull throb. Ethan found him there, his shadow falling across Marcus's slumped form. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside him without waiting for an invitation. The concrete was cold through Marcus's suit, grounding him just enough to breathe. "They don't get it," Ethan said, his voice low but firm. "People form misconceptions based on such little info and expect it to define you. You're not stiff, you're real. They just don't see the work, the hours you put in, the way you tore yourself apart to get here." Marcus nodded, but the words didn't stick, slipping through the cracks of his doubt like water through a sieve. He'd heard it all before. "Don't take it personally. Keep pushing. The craft matters," from directors, from Carla, from Ethan. Yet the doubt was louder, a chorus of his own making, singing a song he couldn't unhear. He tilted his head back against the wall, closing his eyes. "Maybe they're right," he said, barely above a whisper. "Maybe I am trying too hard." Ethan nudged him, a gentle shove. "Or maybe you're just human. Cut yourself some slack, man. You're not the only one who feels this way." Weeks after the premiere, echoes of dust hit streaming platforms, and Marcus's life became a blur of press junkets and social media noise. The reviews rolled in, a mixed bag that kept him on edge. Some praised his rawness, calling him a revelation, while others dismissed him as wooden, a pretty face with no depth. The buzz kept him in the game, though, a lifeline he clung to with white-knuckled desperation. His agent, Carla, a no-nonsense woman with a voice like gravel, landed him an audition for a big-budget thriller, Night's Edge, a chance to play a rogue cop with a haunted past named Detective Sam Carver. It was the kind of role that could redefine him, catapult him from indie darling to household name, if he didn't screw it up. He sat in his apartment, script pages scattered across the coffee table like fallen leaves, a cold cup of coffee in hand. The character was tough, broken, layered. Everything Marcus wanted to be, everything he feared he wasn't. He ran lines in front of a mirror, adjusting his stance, his tone, his glare, trying to find Sam in the lines of his own face. "You don't know me," he growled at his reflection, his voice rough with an edge he hadn't heard before. "You think you do, but you don't." It felt good, sharp, alive, until he caught his own eyes in the glass, wide, uncertain, unmistakably Marcus. "Who am I kidding?" he muttered, dropping the script onto the table with a soft thud. "I'm no rogue cop. I'm just Marcus, pretending again." He paced the room, the hardwood creaking under his restless steps, his shadow stretching long and thin against the wall. The audition was in 2 days, and he was unraveling, threads of confidence pulling apart one by one. He stopped by the window, staring out at the city lights, a sea of glowing pinpricks that mocked his smallness. How many others out there were pretending just like him? Lena stopped by that evening, carrying takeout bags and a bottle of cheap wine, her presence a burst of normalcy in his spiraling world. She was a nurse, practical and no-nonsense, with Marcus's dark eyes and a knack for cutting through his bullshit. She kicked off her sneakers, dropping the bags on the counter. "You look like hell," she said, eyeing the bags under his eyes and the stubble creeping along his jaw. "What's eating you this time?" "Everything," he admitted, slumping onto the couch, the cushions sagging under his weight. "This audition, it's huge. Carla says it's my shot, but I'm terrified I'll choke. Everywhere I go, I'm afraid of being seen as a fraud because I'm not as confident as I appear. I've got the lines down, but what if that's not enough?" Lena poured the wine, the glug of liquid filling the silence, and handed him a glass. "You're too hard on yourself, always have been. Remember that play in high school? You thought you bombed the lead, but everyone loved it, standing ovation and all. Mom cried, Dad bragged for weeks." "That was luck," Marcus said, swirling the wine without drinking. "This is different. If I don't nail this, I'm done. Back to waiting tables, auditioning for toothpaste commercials." She shook her head, sitting across from him, her elbows on her knees. "You're not done. You're just human. One of my rules for happiness is don't judge anything by what's on the surface. Not books, not people, not even yourself. Give yourself a break, Marcus. You're not a fraud. You're just scared, and that's okay." He wanted to believe her, to let her words stitch up the holes in his resolve. But the weight of the mask he wore, cool, collected Marcus, pressed harder, a costume he couldn't shed. He sipped the wine, the taste sharp and bitter, and stared at the script pages. "Scared doesn't cut it in this business," he said. "They want fearless." "Then fake fearless," Lena shot back, her tone firm. You've been faking it your whole life. What's one more day? The next day he met Ethan at a diner, seeking a pep talk over greasy fries and black coffee. Ethan was midway through a burger, ketchup on his chin, when Marcus spilled his fears, his voice low against the clatter of plates and chatter. I keep thinking about what you said at the premiere, he began, picking at a fry. About me being my own worst critic. It's true, but it's paralyzing. What if I can't shake it for this audition? Ethan wiped his mouth with a napkin, leaning forward, his elbows on the chipped table. Then use it. Channel that noise into Sam Carver. He's messed up too, right? Haunted, rough around the edges. Let it fuel you. I once heard a guy say acting's easy until you try it. Then it's a grind. You've got the grind in you, Marcus. Stop fighting it and let it work for you. Marcus chewed on that, the idea of turning his flaws into strength, rolling it around in his mind like a stone smoothed by a river. It wasn't new. Every acting coach he'd ever had preached vulnerability. But coming from Ethan, it landed differently, heavier, truer. Maybe he didn't have to be perfect, just real. He took a sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding him, and nodded. Maybe you're right. Maybe I've been running from the wrong thing. Ethan grinned, stealing a fry from Marcus's plate. That's the Marcus I know. Now eat something. You're gonna need the energy to kick ass tomorrow. The audition room was stark. White walls, a folding table, 3 stone-faced casting directors who looked like they'd seen 1,000 hopefuls and forgotten most of them. Marcus walked in, script in hand, heart pounding so loud he swore they could hear it. He'd rehearsed until his voice cracked, until the lines were etched into his bones, but now it was showtime. He took a breath, deep and steady, letting Sam Carver take over, pushing Marcus to the back seat. You don't know what I've seen, he said, voice low, eyes locked on the wall like it was his suspect, the words carrying the weight of every sleepless night. You look at me and see a badge. I see blood. The lines flowed, rough and honest, and for once, he didn't overthink. He let the doubt, the fear bleed into Sam, making him jagged, alive, a man carved from the same raw material as Marcus's own struggles. His hands clenched at his sides, then relaxed, the tension ebbing as he sank deeper into the role. When he finished, the room was silent, the air thick with something he couldn't name. The lead director, a woman with sharp glasses and sharper eyes, nodded once, her pen tapping the table. Interesting take. We'll be in touch. No smiles, no promises, just a curt dismissal. But Marcus left feeling lighter, like he'd shed a layer of himself in that room. He'd given it everything, flaws and all, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't hate what he saw in his own reflection. Back home, he crashed on the couch, scrolling through messages with a lazy grin. Carla texted, "Heard it went well. Fingers crossed." Ethan called, demanding details, his voice crackling through the phone. So, did you nail it or what? Marcus laughed, a real laugh that shook loose the last of his nerves. I didn't suck, he said. That's a win in my book. A week later, he got the call. He'd landed Night's Edge. Relief hit first, a wave that nearly knocked him over, then pride, warm and steady, settling in his chest. He invited Lena and Ethan over to celebrate, pizza boxes and beer cans cluttering the table, the TV muted on some old cop show with sirens flashing silently. As they toasted, Lena grinned, her glass raised high. Told you, you're tougher than you think. Maybe, Marcus said, sipping his beer, the cold fizz a small comfort. But I still feel like I'm faking it half the time. Even now, with this win, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Ethan raised his bottle, his curls catching the light. That's the secret. We're all just figuring it out, hoping no one notices the cracks. You're not alone in that, man. Never have been. Marcus nodded, letting it sink in, the words wrapping around him like a worn blanket. He thought about the premiere, the audition, the years of tearing himself apart over every missed mark and shaky line. He wasn't cured of doubt, probably never would be, but he was starting to see past it, to the man beneath the mask he'd worn so long it felt like skin. Someone once said you can tell a lot by appearances, like knowing a tree by its fruit. But that's only half the story. The other half was what he built, what he fought for, what he became when the cameras stopped rolling and the lights went dim. True character's not the cover, he said aloud, almost to himself, his voice soft against the hum of the room. It's the pages underneath, the messy ones no one sees. Lena smirked, tossing a pizza crust onto her plate. Deep thoughts from the movie star. I like it. You should put that in your Oscar speech. Shut up, Marcus said, tossing a napkin at her, but he smiled, wide and unguarded, and this time it wasn't a mask. It was him, flawed, real, and for the moment, enough.